Hi, I'm Gary Stockton with Experian Business Information Services. I'm here with Stephanie Eidelman. She is the CEO of IA Institute, and that's a media company that produces news, events, education for the credit and collections industry. And she's an influencer in the world of consumer debt and a strong advocate for women in business. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Eidelman. Stephanie, welcome.
Thanks so much, Gary. I'm pleased to be here.
So if you could tell me a little bit about when you were starting out in your career, did you set out to become a CEO and business owner, or was that the trajectory that you thought that you would take?
My trajectory is nothing like I expected originally. I started my career in the theater, actually. I was originally a theater major at school. And that goes back to fifth grade when I started doing props in elementary school, and I loved it. And I really thought that what I would be was a stage manager, and I wanted to ultimately be a Broadway producer.
So you said recently that you are calling women up versus calling men out. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I think in a lot of areas, it can be fun and sort of cathartic to have a sort of a gripe session, or a woe is us, or to talk about things that are problems. But, as it relates to men and women, to get a whole bunch of women together and call men out or complain, again, it may be satisfying to some degree, but it's really not useful and it's not going to move people forward. And so the Callin Women Up is really more about focusing on how we can get from here to there. What are the positive steps that we can take? What are the ways that we can influence our own behavior and not necessarily depend on men to allow us or do it for us or with us? But really, it's just focusing on the more positive aspect.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say in the last few years, women in business and women really taking their place in business. I know at Experian, we really champion women business leaders. We've got employee resource groups allocated to women, but the men are invited to those meetings too, and we get something out of it as well. I think it's a partnership, really. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it doesn't really matter. Again, anybody who is passionate about developing women or developing anybody, ought to be involved in that. Plenty of men have daughters and, or wives or sisters or whatever, and would like to see them succeed just as much as their sons or brothers or whatever. So I absolutely believe that. We do, one thing you might be alluding to is we started a women's conference last year, and it's really not for men, and maybe it will become for men at some point, and we've certainly had men ask about it. But, there is an element to creating a space that women do feel safe and the ability to share things that maybe they wouldn't share in front of men. And so it's not so much about leaving them out as creating a space where women do feel comfortable to take that first step.
Yeah.
And I can see that different conversations happen. And we have other conferences that have men too, and they're also great. But the character of the conversation is different.
Yeah. So if you overheard a conversation on the train about with a woman considering starting her own company and going into business for herself today in 2020, do you have any advice for her on what would set her off on a good footing?
Gosh, I would suggest it for anybody, woman or man. It's interesting. I am a woman business owner, and I don't know that I would tell you a story of how I've not had opportunities. If I've been slighted as a woman, maybe it's happened and I haven't noticed it, or maybe my threshold for it is different than others. But I would certainly, for anyone looking to start a business, I would give the advice that it's not easy. You have to be prepared for the fact that nobody's going to care about it as much as you do, because you're the owner and the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
However, you can't do it alone, right? So there's a real balance there. And I would just say go for it. I woman or man, I think if you have a passion for something and you're willing to work hard at it, then you should do it. And it's what I find is that it's amazing how easily you can become an authority in something these days by just putting time and effort into it. That alone surpasses often 90% of the competition.
Yes. We, in the data that we've studied on women business owners, there seems to be a reliance on personal credit. That's one of the trends that we've seen the last few times that we've done the study, and a reluctance to shop for credit. Is that, I mean, you work in credit and collections in your industry. Do you think there's, what do you think, why do you think that is? Is it a confidence issue or maybe an education issue in terms of knowing what credit products are out there for business owners?
Well, I bet it is an education issue, and matching the right type of credit to what you need. It may also be an overestimation of what you need, how much is needed. Mm-hmm. People may think they need millions of dollars to start a business, and that may be true in certain types of businesses, but probably not in most. And for that matter, bootstrapping it is probably a great way to go. When you're not beholden to somebody else, you really have more ability to do what's right for the business and not just what that creditor is demanding. So I don't know. I guess it might be. But I will say, in full disclosure, I didn't really have to do a lot of shopping for credit because we have been able to fund the business through the cash through operations of the business. So I haven't had to raise money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd heard this of your company, and that's admirable. And the thing that we are noticing when we study the credit profiles of women business owners and men business owners, and there are different industries, obviously, where you have a lot more groupings of businesses for women versus men, but generally, the credit profiles are quite comparable. So it's quite interesting that when you look at the breadth of credit and the types of credit trade lines that women business owners are accessing versus men, that they're not tapping trade credit earlier in the life of the business, setting up terms with leasing for office equipment or getting terms from distributors, whether it's office supplies. These are some of the things, opening up a business credit card versus using personal credit. These are some of the things that we're hoping can change over time. But generally, we see women are good credit risk, and they're starting businesses in record numbers.
Yeah, it's a great point. As I think about my not only credit for the need to raise money, but credit for the need to get more credit, basically, to open accounts. My business really was a spin-off of a business that my parents started in the late 1980s. And so before I spun it out and needed to get my own lease and my own phone bill and all those things, I realized, the business had been established for quite a while, but not by me. And the credit that I was surprised to find actually how thin the credit file was for my business, because a lot of those accounts had been established under the prior parent company. Mm-hmm. And so it did take a few years to get that going, but it wasn't really an impediment. I was able to do everything I needed to do. I probably just needed to personally guarantee or, put my personal information a little more than I would have thought originally, but it never really held me back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this, this is a good year for your company? The economy seems pretty stable. We had some worries of a recession there earlier in the year, but that seems to have kind of leveled out. Are you feeling confident about 2020 and moving into the next year, or are you seeing uncertainty with things like trade and those things impacting business?
Well, for my business in particular, what affects it most is the environment for my clients, which includes regulatory uncertainty. That's, in the last few years been a little bit more favorable for our industry. Going forward, there's certainly going to be uncertainty about what's going to be in the coming years. I would say that I'm optimistic about the coming year and next year as well. And in part, it's really because we've done a lot of work on focusing and differentiating ourselves and just kind of staying in our lane, or creating our lane and then staying in it. And I think personally, this isn't exactly the question you just asked, but personally, what I've learned a lot as a business owner is it's so easy to become obsessed with what everyone else is doing, and the competitors. You certainly need to be aware of the competitive environment, but to focus too much on that and what you can't control is really a large distraction. And focusing on what you do best and what you can do and doing it the best that you can is going to make you more successful than trying to be on top of everything for everybody and compete with, everyone else in the space. And so that's been what's most important for us. And what exactly the macroeconomic factors are don't have to be noise that's as impactful, especially for a smaller business.
Yeah. Excellent advice. So Stephanie, if women viewers of this content would like to find out more about your institution and you mentioned your conference, how would they do that? How would they go about doing that?
Oh, well, thank you for that softball. So our website is theiainstitute.com, www.theiainstitute.com. And there you can find all the different things that we do, including our Women in Consumer and Commercial Finance Conference, but our other initiatives as well are all summarized there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking time out to speak with us today, Stephanie.
Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate it.